All right, we're going to kick off with the back page of the Irish Independent this morning, which the main story here is about the draw for the All-Ireland Championships, and it's Dubs on the road again as Mayo and Galway are kept apart. So this is the story that Dublin are going to take on Wexford or Louth in their opening gambit, and on the road as well in the Leinster Championship. Were you excited about that?
No.
Really?
I'm literally, that's the first I've seen of it. I saw some mention of it.
It's on most of the back pages.
I didn't see any Dublin players being brought in front of the media yesterday to say, well, you know, a trip to Drogheda, that'll be a very, very tough encounter. Much like what is now the most famous moment in the history of championship draws, which was Johnny Cooper 2 years ago saying Carlow will be a tough match, which has obviously lived in infamy. In fairness, he ended up being kind of half right.
No easy games at inter-county level anymore, Eoin.
Well, yeah, like that Carlow match was probably the toughest Leinster Championship game Dublin have had in the last 5 years. So fair play to them on that one. But so I would take everybody at face value in terms of what they said last night. But to be honest with you, couldn't care less.
Yeah, look,
the draws are shite anyway. Like all the Ulster teams, basically, Monaghan's got the easy side of the draw. Mayo and Galway have kept apart from each other. Tip and Cork has one semi-final. Kerry are on the other side. Who cares?
There is a little bit of that. Let's say no more about it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we can have a conversation. I can get into all.
No,
we can have a really bad conversation about this, or we can gloss over it.
Shane Long boost for Ireland mission is the other story here. You can see the nice shot of him there at the Benetti menswear launch yesterday, looking pretty sharp. But that he is fit for Ireland, so this is a bit of a boost because we don't have too many strikers clearly, and we'll take all of that's gone.
I wonder, is it only now that we're starting to really appreciate Robbie Keane? Like, obviously at the time, everybody, like the pundits and people who played alongside him were made this plea for appreciation, saying you have to really you have to sit back and just admire what Robbie Keane has done. We are not going to have a striker like this again, potentially, certainly not for decades, really. Somebody that prolific, somebody who made something very difficult look quite easy, which was being in the right place at the right time for a lot of his goals, but also his range of finishing was outstanding. If we had Robbie Keane in our squad right now, like coming so close to the World Cup as we did, would we have qualified? Who knows? But like a Robbie Keane in his pomp. Now, the counter-argument to that is Robbie Keane only qualified for one major tournament himself. So, like, I really do think I know that that's one department that we're lacking hugely at the moment, but I just think that it's only now that we're like, God, wasn't it great to have a goal scorer like that? Yeah,
I don't know if that's full, like, I don't know. I get your point, but, like, we're only appreciating him because we don't have a striker at the minute, as opposed to appreciating him for being what he was, which was an amazing goal scorer.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, you know.
Well, I do think if we did have a decent striker at the moment who was even on regularly okay form with their club, I think we'd still be saying to ourselves that that stratospheric level that Robbie Keane got to in terms of prolific goal scoring would still not be reached. It's obviously compounded now with the fact that, yeah, we're going through a bit of striker woe at the moment, and like hopefully I'd like to think that Shane Long will find his groove again before his career is out.
And like he's the sort of player, even if he's not banging in goals, he will bring in other players around him, like in those forward positions. Just one more, as Eoin said, the draws are shite, and we're not going to bang on about it. But one interesting line that stood out for me this morning here: Daily Coy on Dub's return, but refusing to rule it out. It's tucked away inside a lot of these newspapers, but it's really great stuff. He was in front of the media yesterday talking about the possibility that he might go back to Dublin, and obviously it's on vogue at the minute with some managers going back to areas they've been before. He's obviously in charge of Chemical Crokes at the minute. They've a Dublin hurling final to look forward to, so he is very focused on that. But the quote that jumped out for me this morning, Eoin, was that if it's the right thing to do and you want to do it, i.e. going back to the county you've been with before, and there's no disgruntlement among the players that you're going back, pointing out stories about people who didn't do it when they were back. Sure, Jesus, if Loughnane went back in the morning, he'd do a job.
Yeah, it's like himself, and like he is one of the kings at being coy. He just kind of has that great way about him where he can laugh off any suggestion, and it doesn't even look like he's laughing it off, because that's just the way Anthony Daly is.
You've forgotten, by the time you get to the end of his answer, you've forgotten what you were talking about. You just get lost in this amazing his amazing capacity to communicate.
Yeah, 100%. He's interested, is what I'm reading here. As in, very interested. As in, Maddie Kenny is looking around and is like, oh no, this was supposed to be my job. Now, Matty Kenny, of course, had the opportunity to really kind of push the public agenda last weekend, and he said it was disrespectful that he was asked about it, which I thought was quite a weird comment to make.
Well, it was Matty Kenny versus Anthony Daly in the Dublin Championship, and Daly got the better of it. But I mean, it's not, Matty Kenny has done some stuff.
You're a hurling manager, you just been knocked out of the championship. I mean, okay, fair play, this is a big deal that you got knocked out, fair play to the opposition and all that, but it's not really a weird question to ask if you're interested in an inter-county job. In fact, it's actually the question that should be asked. So I thought that was a strange development. If he'd said at that point that I would be sort of interested in the job, we'll see what happens, it's like, well, let's actually take this on a bit further. And granted, the public agenda is totally different to what's actually going on in Dublin GAA right now, but certainly from what I can see over the last week, it's like those two little horses in the amusement park, and Anthony Daly's horse is just taking a little bit of a head.
That's my favourite game.
It is, yeah. I think it's everybody's favourite game.
The one with the balls, like.
The balls, yeah.
Oh, love that game. As long as Anthony Daly's involved in public life in some regard, I'm fine. Like whether that's
Sunday game or
as a pundit or in management, just continue to do something. That's, can't be paid enough money to do whatever it is he's doing, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We need more Anthony Daly, and we've got a lot of him at the moment in punditry, but I think punditry is where you get peak Anthony Daly, because...
You probably do. He's a bit more free to be Anthony Daly.
Yeah, 100%. That being said, would we reach a peak Anthony Daly that we've never seen before if he went back to Dublin and won an All-Ireland with them? Like, imagine that post-match interview with Anthony Daly as an All-Ireland winning manager. That would be one of the best pieces of content ever. There's
a lot of imagining there. I don't know that they're ever going to win an All-Ireland.
I can already see this clip being played back in black and white.
Yeah, right. The Irish Times this morning, it's rugby all the way here, and reflections on Leinster, of course, who opened their Heineken Champions Cup account this evening. Four-time champions Leinster looking healthy and hungry, writes Jerry Thornley here. A host of big names return as Cullen makes 9 changes from the win over Munster. And what a team it looks as well. On paper, that Leinster team look absolutely phenomenal, and some of the players who haven't even made the squad, it's absolutely incredible. So we're going to get into more of that with Quinny a little bit later on. Lure of the All Black jersey, no longer enough for Sapawanga, is the theme here for Johnny Watterson as well. This is ahead of the that Leinster Wasp game as well. So that's kind of rugby pretty much all the way on the Irish Times this morning. In the Irish Examiner, it's rugby as well here. The one to beat is the picture of Johnny Sexton. Leinster kick-off defensive European Cup. Munster gear up for early Exeter exam. It's a bloody nice Leinster jersey, that.
Show me that again. Oh, that is class,
isn't it?
I haven't seen that. Is that? Have they worn that?
The new sort of away. It might even. I may be mistaken, but it might even be a third kit. With a third kit.
Might be the third kit, because they have that camo kit and they have that just regular navy kit, which they wore last week, and then that must be either a second or third kit. Yeah, that is nice. That is nice.
And also then you have Shane Duffy urging Declan Rice to go with his heart. Like it is unfortunate, and for Declan Rice and for all the players who are going to get asked about it between now and Kingdom Come, or at least until he decides whether he's English or Irish. It's going to dominate the newspapers when all these games come up, because a new player is going to be put in front of the media, and that player is going to be asked about whether Declan Rice should make up his mind or not. And it's Shane Duffy on this occasion who's urging Declan Rice to go with his heart.
Yeah, it's not going to be resolved either before the next international break, you'd assume. So that's whatever, 2-3 more matches where press is done in the lead up to it, and it is like flogging a dead horse at this point. We will have a decision before the end of the year. That's what we've been told. Which way that decision is going to go now, it seems that you asked me 10 days ago and it's like definitely England. You ask me now and it's like, well, there's a life possibility that Ireland might be back in the mix. Shane Duffy, of course, had to make his own decision about 10 years ago at this point, so he's well placed to talk about it. But like, it's an odd one, isn't it? Because you've got to keep asking the question, but the answer has to always be the same. Anybody who says that it's not up to him to make his own decision, or you can understand why he's taking time over it, like, I think there is a correct answer to the question. So you're getting the same answers from different people to the same question, but the question has to be asked. So it's just a constant cycle of repetition.
He was up in front of the media during the week, and this is obviously ahead of the upcoming couple of games, Denmark and Wales. And this one here was sort of jumped out for me. A couple of bad results don't make you a bad team, which is a statement of fact. Now, we've had a lot of bad results over a long period of time. You could argue, obviously, that the Denmark game at the back end of last year, if that gone a different way, then actually we'd have been absolutely fine, obviously. But, it didn't. And, I mean, I don't know. We're certainly not a great team. Are we even a good team? We're probably not even a good team, really.
Well, that kind of goes back to the Martin O'Neill idea that himself and Roy Keane have helped Ireland to overachieve in their tenure. Now, looking at kind of the injury reports, particularly from Wales and Denmark over the last couple of days, I've got a sneaking suspicion that we could come away from this with 6 points.
Based on two very specific reasons.
On two very specific reasons, and it's completely fine to get ahead of yourself because of these two very specific reasons. One is that Christian Eriksen is definitely going to miss the Denmark game. The other one is that, listening to Ryan Giggs last night, Gareth Bale is probably going to be absent from Tuesday night's squad against Ireland. Now, like, if Ireland had somebody of Gareth Bale and Christian Eriksen's ability, we would have qualified for the World Cup. We probably would have got to the last 16 in the World Cup. International football can hinge on one player like that. International football is nothing in comparison to club football. One of those world-class players can make you appear like a world-class team. And when I say world-class team, I mean top 16 in the world. Like, Denmark got there last year, and if you take Christian Eriksen out of the team, Denmark, are they much better than Ireland?
Probably
are they even better than Ireland?
Better. Well, they probably are, but probably not that much better.
Not that much better. Like, that's how much one player can completely change the quality of a side.
And the two players that you're talking about there are obviously also in key kind of positions, and it gets me wondering if, I mean, our best player, whether, you know, he's better transplanted into another place, another area of the pitch to almost better influence the team.
Well, that's it. The other key thing here is that not only is this key player the rocket fuel that propels you to whatever, Wales beating Belgium in the Euros, or Denmark narrowly crashing out, almost getting to a World Cup quarter-final this summer. It's also the life support machine that you depend on, that they're looking to this inspiration constantly. It's get Christian Eriksen the ball. We saw it in Dublin last year, where he was literally a 10 out of 10 performer. Like, if you, like the whoscored.com, if you go onto that, breaks down all the statistics into minute details. He was a 10 out of 10 performer, which you very rarely see on that website. They just basically funneled everything through Christian Eriksen. Wales, maybe to a lesser extent, but they do it the same way against Gareth Bale. He was impressive against us last month. He still probably would have lost that game now, but he was very, very impressive against us last month. So when you pull that out of the team, not only are you losing the rocket fuel, you're losing the basic ability to function, I would say, where the reliance on the player is totally shown up. Look at Wales last night. The Sergio Ramos goal.
You did look at Wales last night.
I did. I watched the full game last night.
Fair play to you, like, for a start.
And I listened off the ball, of course.
Absolutely, yeah. And watched it because it was being live streamed.
Of course, yeah. How could I forget? But other than that, I was watching Wales against Spain last night. And it's so stark to not only notice how noticeable the absence of Gareth Bale was in terms of the spark that he gives a team, but also the sort of base that they then revert to. Like, you look at Sergio Ramos' goal last night, and they forgot the basic art of defending a set piece. Like, the replay shows Sergio Ramos standing there. The Wales player in front of him is about from me to you. The Wales player behind him is from me to you as well, but in the opposite direction. And everybody's just looking around. Sergio Ramos is totally free. He's kind of like twiddling his thumbs. He's like, when is the Wales player going to come and mark me? The ball comes in from a free kick. He's looking around. Still nobody marking me. 2 yards out from goal. Heads into the back of the net. To call it schoolboy defending would actually be an insult to schoolboys. It was one of the worst pieces of defending I've ever seen from an indirect free kick. Now, what is Ireland's one and only strength?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's attacking set pieces.
And that Shane Duffy is central to that.
Yes. Like, you just pull the heart out of a team. Like, the umbilical cord is completely cut. It's like your first day at school going into a game without Christian Eriksen or Gareth Bale, except all your schoolmates are like old lads with beards and they're smoking out the back of the school. It's like completely different. You're totally into the deep end. And
I don't know where that analogy is going.
I would be quite fearful from a Denmark and Wales perspective.
Yeah.
The only thing is that we are not very good. I think from their perspective, we can be very quietly confident that we can get 6 points from these games.
Yeah.
The only thing is we need to go out there and do it and maybe have that confidence, especially at home, to play a bit of football and get those goals. But, hey, I'm confident for Shane Duffy being in the box against the Welsh on Tuesday night for sure. The Danish, though, are a little bit better at defending set pieces.
Yeah, they are, yeah. And it'll be interesting to see how a team who, like you say, when that umbilical cord is pulled out of them, sort of, particularly when it's only over a couple of games, like he's in a remarkable record. It was whatever it was, like 15 goals in 17 competitive games and 5 assists over the same period. Like, his stats are bloody incredible, and he's clearly an incredible player. But I wonder, when it's just over a short period of time, whether the rest of the group have the capacity to actually draw themselves up to a level that gets them by, even over that. Like, that isn't a long-term plan. Because I mean, even reading Thomas Delaney's quotes this week, he's they're talking about Eriksen not being there. So what are you going to do? It's very much a case of we don't know who to give the ball to. Like, we just get the ball and we give it to him, and that's what we do.
Yeah, like, everybody's bar is raised when Christian Eriksen is on the pitch. The way he just enabled, like, Pione Sisto, I'm sure you remember, was absolutely brilliant that night in the Aviva last year as well. like you look at him without Christian Eriksen, like him that night, he's never like replicated that form at club level. He's been good for club level. That's why he's got an international call up. But he looked like a Leroy Sané last year when he was playing alongside Christian Eriksen. He is not that good a player. Right. So everybody's level drops. Granted, we don't have anybody playing at a level in La Liga like Sisto is, or you look at the likes of Thomas Kjær, you look at Andreas Christensen, you look at Kasper Schmeichel. Like they are better in a lot of other areas. But I just wonder how they will be able to cope with the idea that suddenly they're at close to our level again. With Eriksen, they're so much superior to us. Yeah. But that confidence blow that when Eriksen is missing, it's giving me a lot of confidence. And granted, I was not quietly confident, loudly confident when they came to the Aviva last year, and look how that ended up. I don't like to get confident when it comes to the Irish team anymore, but sometimes you just got to go with the flow.
That covers all bases. You mentioned Sergio Ramos' goal from last night and the various proximities and all that sort of stuff.
Look at that. Like,
now, he does have one of his own players sort of effectively, and very helpful, two of his own players, you might say, actually being a bit of a buffer to some of the Welsh players around him. Granted, particularly this guy at centre-back there, not making the most amazing inroads.
No, like, he started the Welsh body in the
That's been whipped in from the left-hand side here,
on the left-hand side. He is standing in the middle of those two Welsh defenders. They're obviously picking up the men in white closest to them, and Sergio Ramos is just standing on his own. It was horrible defending. Just what I see him there, like obviously Ethan Ampadu went off injured last night as well, so they could be missing Gareth Bale and Ethan Ampadu for Tuesday night.
How did he play before he went off?
Ampadu, he was their best player. Right. I just think he's an absolutely classy individual. His range of passing is outstanding. He is that person where he does a very simple thing where he just turns towards the opposition goal and passes the ball that way. And like, without being too tongue-in-cheek about it, that's one of those key skills which looks a lot easier than it really is, that the split-second pass, spotting the gap in the opponent's defence, and just bringing players like Aaron Ramsey into the side. Like,
you've me talked back into Wales being a good team even without Bale, by the way.
Why?
Outside of the crappy defending.
But Ampadu came off injured.
Yeah. Is he out now? Is that?
Well, I don't know. He hobbled off, to use that expression.
Fine.
He did hobble himself off. He wasn't stretchered off. Right. But Ryan Giggs didn't sound too confident in his fitness after the game, although after the game you've literally not had a chance to speak to the player. Or
hobbling yourself off is, doesn't sound like an amazing thing to have to do.
No, I would hate to do it myself.
One of the newspapers that did buck the trend, we mentioned the Anthony Daly quotes, one of the papers that did buck the trend of actually running with them was the Times Ireland edition, that he's eyeing that Dublin return. Rob Kearney, do not write off English sides. We'll get into that a little bit later on. And a really fantastic photograph there. You can see my £200,000 haggle with Deadly Doug. Tony Cascarino recalling his dealings with the former Aston Villa chairman who passed away yesterday at the age, I think, of 94. And there's reflections inside from Tony Cascarino, who writes about the day that he went to sign for Villa in 1990, and he sort of rocks around to his home, and Doug Ellis's wife is there, and she's got the tea cakes and sandwiches out in a silver tray, and it's all very sort of amenable, I suppose, would be probably the word I'd use here to parse what's going on. It's like a scene from Mary Poppins or Enid Blyton.
Right.
Right, Tony Cascarino here. But Doug was playing hardball. Graham Taylor was also, he was the manager at the time, obviously. And he was also in the room, and Tony was pushing for a 200 grand payment for himself, and Doug Ellis is making the point that no, there are no players around here that get paid that sort of money, so you can forget about it, pal. And essentially playing hardball and kind of giving him the idea that, listen, if it's not you, it'll be someone else, so take it, leave it, I'm not that worried. While Graham Taylor is kind of giving him the wink and saying, listen, we will get something done, this will be fine. But Doug Ellis takes him on a tour of the club at some point and shows him all the amazing photographs of the legendary players that are around the walls, and at some point or another goes, anything you notice, any sort of a theme here from a lot of these photographs you're looking at? And Tony's like, well, I don't see a lot of these guys around anymore. And he's like, absolutely, on the money. You don't do your stuff, you are out.
Right.
So it seems like the Deadly Doug, as was his nickname, does appear to have been accurate by all accounts.
How much did he settle for in the end, I wonder?
150.
All right, so it wasn't too much of a step down.
Not too much of a step down, no. And it was...
And he got a few free tea cakes out of it.
It was a 1.1 million 1.1 million transfer fee, which I think might have been a record for them at the time. But always interesting to get those, particularly back in the day, like those stories of how those transfer dealings went down in such a bloody different way to the way it happens now. Like there was the Dean Saunders, Brian Clough story of, I don't remember that. But I mean, I know
that was quite
to be
distasteful.
Fair, it was distasteful, and actually, by all accounts, a lot of it inaccurate, embellished by Dean Saunders, as it turned out. But the tone of the story, I think, is very much this sort of a tone of kind of Tony Cascarino doesn't talk about having any representative with him or anybody being his agent necessarily. It's Tony Cascarino having a conversation with the chairman of the club.
Yeah, you'd almost forget that when people say that the character has gone out of football, it's also the backroom character that's gone out. It's the cold boardroom which now prevails, with a lot more people involved, a lot bigger financial interests involved.
Yeah, a lot more like you won't get these stories going forward, like, you know what I mean? It's, you know, Messi isn't even in the room. He gets a call from his agent at some point later in the day going, yeah, I got you that 48 million quid you were after and everything's sorted, let's crack on.
Yeah, I guess business has changed in general. I guess it's all walks of life. But that's just like cowboy stuff in a beautiful way. We'll move on to the Irish Daily Mail this morning. Still top dogs is the back page headline, but Leinster a target for the chasing pack, warns O'Driscoll, and boost for Ireland with Long back in training. Back page of the Herald then this morning is Shane Duffy saying, let's put it right. Irish squad eager to avenge Danish loss and insist they have the belief to get the win, while Dublin are to face Louth or Wexford in the Leinster Football Championship next year. And Richard Dunn making a very good point here. Denmark ordinary without Eriksson.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's get into that.
Yeah, yes. Did you know that Christian Eriksen improves Denmark quite a bit? Back page of the Mirror this morning is have no regrets. Duffy's advice to Rice over his international future. And Klopp says you get nothing for second in football. And Giants on final approach. That's the only kind of real thing of note from that, is that it's Galway versus Mayo in a Connacht final next year. Stick that up in the Roscommon and Sligo dressing rooms now, obviously, but it's probably going to be a Galway versus Mayo Connacht final, which Mayo will win, and that'll be the end of that from a Galway football resurgence point of view.
I'll be replaying this back to you in black and white, on to use your own expression.
Yeah, well, that's the way it is. Yeah, James Horan was speaking last night about being back in the Mayo fold, and he says that he's spoken to a lot of the players about being involved next year. Yeah. So there's a lot of question marks about potential retirements in the Mayo camp. Andy Moran being the number one.
David Clarke.
Yeah, I personally would have thought that if they're going to retire, they'd have done it by now. But Horan has basically confirmed that they're going to be around next year. By last night, saying that he's spoken to the squad, starting with a top-down approach. He's spoken to all of the older lads, he said. And he says, I haven't heard yet if anybody's retiring, and everybody wants to be involved with trials. Yeah. So that says to me that Andy Moran and David Clarke, etc., all want to be involved with Mayo next year. So
why not?
That's my reading of it. It's not totally confirmed.
No, but like, if you are Andy Moran, for example, and there's been a new broom, and it's not that long ago that the year before last that he was the Player of the Year.
Last year.
So why the hell would you not? And also from the other side, if you're James Horan, you're like, right, this is a guy of unbelievable, like, serious pedigree. Yeah. Even, I mean, he's still, there isn't enough youth coming through in that Mayo team necessarily that we've seen yet that suggests that Andy Moran wouldn't be guaranteed himself a place in the first 15. Yeah, even outside of his influence.
Yeah, there is a danger with this Mayo squad that they do become too obsessed with the Dublin challenge. That James Horan has spoken. I don't think that it's James Horan's mentality, but he has spoken about some of the kids that are yet to get into the fold with the senior setup, where not that they haven't been given the opportunity yet, but they haven't had the time required to fully prove themselves as a top senior intercounty player. Whereas next year, are they going to get that space to breathe? I'm not so sure. I
mean, I think the point that you make is valid, but I'd actually extend it out. I'd say it's the worry for a lot of teams that you get overly exposed to the idea of we have to put our game plan in place to beat Dublin, and you get very focused on it. And the game plan to beat Dublin, bizarrely enough, might not be the game plan to beat everybody.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Certainly from a Mayo perspective, you look at the 2017 championship and their game plan throughout the entire summer faltered on a number of occasions. They were very lucky to survive, and it clearly worked against Dublin, but not to the full extent. Back page of the Irish Daily Star is homes where the Mart is. Martin Neal wants to see Ireland grace Euro 2020 at the Aviva for sporting rather than sentimental reasons, and model our wee army for dubs. Effing hell, says Gareth Southgate. He's got no problem with his England stars swearing tonight because they play in an empty stadium in Croatia. So it means that the television cameras and microphones might be able to pick up some F-bombs and potentially some C-bombs, which of course we would never allow to be broadcast, but that might happen with their live broadcast tonight in Croatia.
It's a bizarre line.
Well, I guess...
Who cares? Like, footballers
asked about it. We've
shock horror.
He says that he spent 2 years trying to encourage them to talk to each other on the pitch, so it'd be counterproductive to stop them doing so now. When the goaling gets tough, then Duffy gets going, says the back of the Sun this morning. He is our best hope of goals, you would suspect, over the next 2 games. New horizons, says the other headline here.
Tab of the morning.
Tab of the morning to you indeed. He still hankers for a return to club management, Roy Keane does, and drive for 5. That's the story on Jim Gavin's charges and their fixtures for next summer. Friday Fizz says the front of the Racing Post, Future Champions Festival at Newmarket. It's live on ITV4. And back of the Racing Post is We Meet Again. England set for tight rematch with World Cup conquerors. It's Croatia against England at 7:45 this evening. Back of the Guardian then is Wales 1, Spain 4. Wales handed reality check. Like, is there a situation here where Ryan Giggs becomes Steve Staunton? Like, wins his first game comprehensively?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's for a lot of reasons, I suggest no. But I mean, I think that probably an outlier for international football in a lot of regards to what happened with Stan, that he was just so clearly out of his depth. And there is, I mean, I know we've been just discussing the reliance on Gareth Bale, but I mean, we've mentioned a couple of other players there that to suggest that if you or I were leading Wales, that it probably wouldn't even be that bad.
Yeah, and a lot of those players are trending in the right direction, like the Brooks and Ampadu's, and even like their championship talent looks so much better than our championship talent, which has to be a facade. The fact that Tom Lawrence is looking better than half of our championship players is just because of form. It's just because of the players they're playing around with, and that maybe on a case-by-case basis it's not the case. Front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section is exercising the demons. Stones wants revenge for World Cup heartache, and England fans will be heading for the hills tonight. There's a little hill outside the stadium, and there's an apartment flat as well where all the England fans are going to be heading for, so that they can actually get their eyes in the game, which is an interesting sort of tactic. Like, I would imagine that the Croatian fans are going to be there first.
Yeah, it'll be a bit weird. So that's that. We didn't. You did all of those. The Racing Post, a whole lot of them done there. We didn't get any Tab of the morning. We
did the New Horizons.
Well, I mean, I just offered that forward just to try to dig you out a bit of a hole. God, that's bizarre.
Well, I've taken it and I've run with it.
The Irish News, we can take a quick look at what's going on in the Irish News. Ex-Down star Murtagh suffers broken jaw in senior swan song. This is more stories of violence in the GAA. Brendan Crossan writing here. This is actually not in relation to violence in the GAA. It was an accidental clash that resulted in this particular injury. That is the Irish News this morning, and we also want to give you a look at what have we got here? This is a tweet from the player involved. It's never been a more honest quote than "Your health is your wealth, Eoin. #realise this week."
Yeah, I hear that phrase quite a lot, actually. It's very true.
Yeah,
it is. Like, you obviously can't use it as sort of a bartering tool or anything, but it is kind of your measure of wealth, isn't it?
He broke his jaw in the early minutes due to an accidental clash with a teammate in the Downpatrick versus Ballyholland game in Down last week. Caught everyone's attention after the mass brawl that started in the crowd. Of course, that's what the game was infamous for, and led to players jumping in. So that's the Irish News this morning. AS as well, we want to give you a bit of a look at this Spain has goals in it. I've just translated that headline as being at an average of 4 goals per game. Luis Enrique has started his tenure well. Today's front page there after a 4-1 friendly win, as you've mentioned, over Wales.